Let's take a look back now at Russia's involvement in Syria. I'm joined now by Gulnur Aybet. She's the head of political science and international relations at Bahcesehir University here in Istanbul. Gulnur, always a pleasure to have you in.
Hello.
Okay, first of all, quickly, your assessment of Russia in the first 12 months before we go on to the rest of it.
Well, I mean, before Russia actually went into the theatre of war in Syria, the rebels were actually doing quite well, and Assad really found himself squeezed on the ground, and that's why he asked for Russia's help. But once Russia went in, that's actually been reversed. But I think once Russia was there, what's really happened and complicated the picture in Syria is the, first of all, Russian-US relationship, the issue of Turkey and its border, and US still aiding the YPG, which Turkey considers a terrorist organization, and then the Russian-US relations with regard to that, as well as how to label. I mean, I think the crux of the question here is really how to label the rest of the opposition that are all opposed to Assad. So on one hand, you know, you get this this phrase like moderate rebels, but you know, when you look at it in close up, for the United States, that also includes the YPG. So that's, you know, one problem. The other thing is with the siege of Aleppo, the people of Aleppo had no choice at the end to actually turn to more radical groups among the opposition to soften the siege. And once that happened, that's actually played right into Russia's hands, saying, look, we're actually attacking radicals in this war. And what the United States is trying to do is try to separate the more radical rebels from the moderate ones by helping the moderate ones and actually attacking more radical rebel or opposition groups. But this is easier said than done because the situation on the ground is so complicated, because we've seen from time to time a lot of the opposition groups either fighting each other or working together, as the fluid environment on the ground and the changing map is changing and transforming day to day. But despite Russia coming in, although the rebels, or the more, if we want to call it more, the Free Syrian Army, for example, which is regarded as more moderate rebels, have been actually quite pounded and squeezed out. And unfortunately, of course, cities like Aleppo have been suffering drastically. But despite that, when you look at the overall map, Assad forces have not been able to make enormous gains regarding, I mean, when you actually compare it to the amount of military assistance they're getting from Russia.
In terms of the Russian involvement, how much do you think it is them supporting an ally in Assad, and how much do you think it is they saw an opportunity for the United States being weak, Obama reneging on his red lines to thumb their nose at the West and show what they could do? How much do you think it's actually Putin playing the strongman?
Yes, I think it's more of the latter. I mean, Russia has certainly found a vacuum in Syria to get in there. And they've been able to dress it up in international law, as they did very skillfully, actually, during the Georgian War as well, when they said it was actually peacekeeping with Crimea. They said it was self-determination. So they're actually using all these key phrases of international law that the United States does with a lot of its military interventions. And here they said, well, you know, we have this ally, and they've asked us for help under Article 51 of self-defense, so we're there. And how, you know, how can you argue against that? So the way they're presenting it is very much that. But recently, I mean, United States and Russian envoys in the United Nations had a very serious exchange of harsh words. And I really thought this was probably the most serious breakdown of US-Russian relations we've seen since the end of the Cold War, when Samantha Power, the UN ambassador of the US, said that Russian actions were amounted to barbarism. So I think these are very, very, you know, trying times with regards to the relationship, but also Russia wanted to secure its military stronghold and bases in Syria, and I think this is what it was all about.
And finally, then, let's talk about Turkey's role in this. Obviously, the second largest power in NATO. Seen a recent slight pivot to Russia. There is Putin is coming here in a couple of weeks' time. How do you see Turkey's role playing out in the coming months, perhaps years of this civil war?
Well, Turkey's priority now is its national security, as any country's would be. And it has a serious national security priority and concern with regards to securing its border, not just against Daesh, but also against PKK, which equals the PYD, which is across the border. And Turkey's priority always has been to ensure that there is not this long strip of contiguous land controlled by the YPG across its very long border with Syria. So it's always maintained that this should not happen. And regardless of what the United States says about maintaining the unity of Syria, even if it's a sort of weaker federal kind of unified government at the end of this war, Turkey still does not want to see a contiguous zone across its border controlled by the YPG.
Just quickly, do you see Turkey getting further involved, do you think? I mean, Operation Euphrates Shield is, I don't think it's over, it's still going on.
Oh, it's still going on.
Do you see them getting further involved in the coming weeks?
Well,
months?
Turkey's actually, you know,
going deeper into the country?
They want to stay and ensure that that strip is actually controlled by the moderate rebels, and they want to see refugees returning to these lands so that it's not, so there's no sort of ethnic cleansing or demographic changes imposed by the YPG. I think that's another security concern for Turkey. But that being said, I think, you know, Turkey right now is quite wary of any further cooperation with regards to the liberation of Raqqa, because that's really too deep inside. Turkey, I don't think their priority of securing that strip across the border requires them to go as far as Raqqa. So I think in that sense, that's something that they'll have to work out with the United States as to how they're going to cooperate. But right now, on the ground, regardless of the peace process, these three countries have to find a way to somehow reconcile their priorities and cooperate militarily, because they're the ones who are actually shifting and shaping the map. Russia, United States and Turkey. And this is really crucial.
Absolutely. Gulnur, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.